Yeah.
Doesn't the Berne Convention make it mandatory only for national laws to definitely have that as a fair use exception, and it doesn't govern individual parties contracting law?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
National laws.
Yeah.
So national laws make it mandatory that you have a fair use, but still you can contract out of fair
Yeah,
use.
exactly.
That you can contract out of. But if national laws don't define it as a fair use, then naturally there is a market for quotations also. Right? So basically you can't nullify a fair use for quotations. You can nullify it only through a contract. The law cannot nullify it. Law has to have it. It's a minimum mandatory thing. Okay. So if you try and look into this perspective of right, and when you say you have a right, does not mean that you are defining it as a right only in a sort of very little sense that you want to call it nothing but like an exception and a right. But when you call it a right, then you go back and see what are types of public policy rationales you can use to articulate it as a right. Otherwise, what is going to happen? With the possibility, and not just fair use in terms of contracting out of fair use, technology is another layer that can deter you from fair use. Right? So, what do? You have a PDF and you have several layers of locks, digital locks, you can't access. Fair use law. So, for example, previously, when you used to go to bookstores, what would you do? You would get books, open it up, read it, flip through it, okay, and then buy it. But certain magazines type things where you had 10-15 pages of very interesting stuff, they would actually do what? Put it in a plastic cover, seal it, and would not allow it. But generally books were available. Today when you want to buy through Amazon or Flipkart, is that kind of a preview or browse through available? Yes?
No, but like if you look at Google Books also,
Google
they
Books,
have,
yes.
they have no, they have also.
But what?
restrictions.
When restrictions
Only
depends
certain
on the
pages.
Boolean search you do, on the search.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can extract any, you can read any page you want from the book. Only that particular thing where Flipkart I doubt, because I have bought so many books from Flipkart, I haven't got any opportunity to preview the whole book as a PDF file. Wow. I can't download it, but I can flip through. No, they wouldn't allow it. But go to a bookstore, allow you to do it. And you buy, you make your decision to buy. Right? So technology can be one layer where certain kinds of uses which you think are normal, fair use, quote unquote fair, maybe fair use, may not be fair use, are no more allowed. But you can probably, use existing fair use exceptions, okay? Because under the current law, although you have digital rights management and an additional layer of technological protection measures given to whom? Given to the copyright owners, still there is an exception. So the interesting thing about Indian copyright law is whatever exceptions you have in this context will be or is already extended to the digital context. So if you feel that there is already an inherent exception underlying 52, okay, in 52, then the 52 exception can as well be availed in the digital context by doing what? By breaking the technological protection measure, TPM. You need to break it. Now there can be additional cost for breaking it. Sometimes it's profitable to break it, sometimes it's not profitable to break it. Sometimes you may not know how to break it, sometimes you may want, and that's what the law lays down in detail. If you want to do it to someone else, then there are so many restrictions. The other person should actually note down what is the use, why you want to do it, name, details. So that can get complicated. So it's not just contract, because contract is very strong, that you contract out of fair use and you have nothing. But technology protection measure can also mean something like that, equally. Although the law allows you, in practice things may be different. Okay? It's not that it's always that you cannot access, but depending on the content, depending on the business models, you may have several layers of TPMs that may deter you from fair use. And that's where another layer of interaction between digital rights management and fair use. Yeah.
How does that change if fair use is a defensive attack?
That's why I said, when you coin it as a right, okay, you would try and articulate it more in terms of these freedoms. So when you say a right with freedoms, probably you need to define it in a more broader way to include kinds of freedoms that you would want to enjoy. Because now what is happening? It's a limitation, and limitation, although I don't know which rule of interpretation says this, limitation has to be interpreted as a narrower one, because if it's become broader, then it subsumes the general. Okay. So if you articulate it the other way, probably we might. I'm just giving you a perspective. I'm not very sure whether this will ultimately lead to anything. Okay. It's just one form of constructing the way we want to. So now let's look into certain Indian cases and figure out what's happening. Okay. Fair dealing of musical works, Super Cassettes Industries versus Hamar Television Networks. Now, what happens in this case? Hamar Television Network is a news channel basically, and then they play news. In between, they have slots, small 5 minutes, 4 minutes slots in which they play albums. Super Cassettes has a big problem with this. They are saying, you are a news channel. How dare you play? Play without our permission? Seek a license. They say fair use. Fair use where? 52(1)(a)(2) and B2. So what is 52(1)(a)(2) and B2? Just go through the back. This is prior to the amendment. You have the unamended format also. Yeah, it says fair dealing literary, dramatic, musical or artistic work not being a computer program for the purpose of 2. Criticism or review, whether of that work or any other work. And B says fair dealing of literary, dramatic, musical or artistic work for the purpose of reporting current events by broadcast in a cinematographic film or by means of photograph. Okay, this is the previous provision because it was in 2011 before the amendment in 2005. Now in 39A it relates to fair use for, I'm reading 39B, sorry. Acts not infringing broadcast reproduction right of performer's right. No broadcast reproduction right of performer shall be deemed to be infringed by B. The use consistent with fair dealing of excerpts of a performance or of a broadcast in reporting current events or for bona fide review, teaching or research. So basically these exceptions are carved in the nature of research, review, criticism, reporting of current events category. What is Hamar Television saying? Whatever it is doing in terms of showing those video clips is what? Report. It is important for it is trying to build a linkage between the content and the reporting of current events, or for the purpose of criticism, review basically, review. Okay, not as much as criticism. Now, what should the court do in this case? Should they allow a fair use exception? And how would the court try and judge? What do you think the court can do? Basically, how do you evaluate?
It was there in the Dr. Fisher lecture. There are four indicators. One is the nature of the part you take, the amount,
purpose and character of work,
the amount, whether it eats into the market of the original author, and
Purpose and character.
Purpose and character of the work.
Focus in character and something else I forget.
4 factors. Okay. Now the issue is this. If you already have a copyright law and that defines, it says this is the list we have, do you actually need to go and look into the 4 factors again? Because you have a code.
I think because the law itself provides only the specific topics under fair dealing is allowed, but then you still need to decide whether the dealing in this case is fair or not. So
Yeah.
to do that, they use the fair use factor.
Yeah, but then do they use the word fair then? Do they say fair criticism, fair review? Do they say so? Let me see.
It says fair.
A fair dealing with a literary work. Yeah, fair dealing with a literary work. Okay, and then it says the acts are prescribed. Okay, the acts are given.
Yeah.
Now, but in front of each and every act, they don't say fair. Need not necessarily be. Okay, because once they say fair, what is fair dealing? I mean, if it has to be fair dealing, then there has to be some amount of fairness. Now, what is this amount of fairness, and how do you find it? In this case, the court said, yes, quantitative test is important. You look into how much of quantity is taken. But what is also important is the quality, where a single note, a musical note, may also lead to infringement. Okay? One musical note, taken out, played, infringed. But playing sometimes a little more may also not lead to infringement, depending on the situation. You know what happened in this case? The court went into the logs of that particular channel and found out when these musical works were played, okay, and what did they do after that or before that? And they found that these musical works were played in standalone items. It neither had any link to the purpose of what they were trying to do. Okay, that is news reporting. And then when they say current events, they are not talking about current events in terms of, you know, the music involved. So they were totally talking something different in the news, but in between they were playing these as standalone. So court did not find any linkage between the nature of use, okay, and the objective which you try to justify, reportage, current events, right? So section 2 must be confined to purposes mentioned therein: criticism, review or reportage of current events. This is not criticism, review or reportage of current events because it has no link. It looked into the actual, you know, evidence in this matter. So court did not find linkages between infringing act and the defense provided in section 15. Okay, but what is important is that the court laid down something called as principles, and which I call Super 13 principles. Okay, if you look into your materials and if you open page 337 and 338 of your materials, Padmanabhan has actually quoted them in full, at full length. Okay, so they said that there are 13 principles that you need to consider after evaluating so many cases. And look into these principles will give you a fair bit of idea as to how Indian fair use law is not a complete code in itself, but it is prone to interpretations based on the criteria of fairness. Okay, so what are those 13 principles? Page 337.
Page 221 of 19.
And mind you, all these 13 are not standalone. Again, they are overlapping because the courts may also get confused sometimes with what they have to say on one and the other one. Sometimes they also may be competing or contradictory. But what is important is that they are not required to be in conjunction. You don't need to have all of them. Okay? And they don't also say that you have to evaluate them by giving equal values or equal measures. Some things can be more important in certain cases, some things can be less important in certain cases. So what are those? Let's look into one by one. Can anybody read through? Yeah?
It is neither possible nor advisable to define the exact contours of fair dealing.
The first thing is it is not necessary. I mean that's one of the important principles because it means that it becomes a question of fact. Although it's a question of law as to how you want to define fair dealing, but it would depend on a particular fact situation. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah.
It is a question of fact, degree, and at the end of the day, overall impression carried by the court as to whether a work amounts to fair dealing or not. In ascertaining whether extracts taken from a copyrighted work have been put to fair use, the extent and the length of the extracts may be relevant. Long extracts followed by short comments may in certain circumstances be unfair, while short extracts followed by long comments may be fair.
Oh, wow. Wow. A very, very interesting characterization of what you want to, call as fair use. Short extracts with long comments, long extracts with short comments means wherever there are long extracts with short comments, there is a chance that you are infringing, you are copying. Interesting way to define. But then again, there is a possibility that this may not always be true. If someone has written a thesis in one page, and you can defend, or you can critique it in a paragraph, does this rule apply then? Get the point? Because to get his idea out, you want it in your own words. Say it is something like religious text, like Wendy Doniger does. She picks up religious texts and does what? Gives an alternative Freudian psychoanalysis perspective. So if you want to critique Wendy Doniger, what would you want to do? You want to take that entire portion and put it in your book. And maybe your criticism can be limited in 2 or 3 sentences. Why? Because the interpretation of this is not this. Point number 2, point number 3. Done. Criticism done. So entire long paragraph and a short paragraph. Can't you have a situation like that? So we need to understand that this is just one of the factors, and it can be entirely, different depending on the nature of the work. And why I'm talking about Wendy Doniger's work here? Text interpretation. That's why it has to be quoted in length. So some things have to be quoted in length, right? So yeah.
The right to make fair use or to deal fairly with a copyrighted work includes the right to criticize not only the style but also the underlying doctrine or philosophy of the work. In this regard, criticism could be both strong and unbalanced. Such criticism by itself would not result in the forfeiture or the defense of fair dealing. Malicious and unjustified criticism may give to the aggrieved party a cause for instituting an action of defamation, but it would not confer a right founded in copyright.
So what does the criticism have to do with copyright? What is the court saying? So copyright should be sort of criticism neutral. But then copyright always tries and looks into what criticism is being done and whether it's actually criticism. Don't they do it? Which is this case? And I'll discuss this case later. Rogers versus Kinnos and Campbell case. Right? There can be different understanding of what amounts to literary or artistic criticism. So you have to read Liang's article for that. Liang's article actually tries and gives you a very nice perspective of how criticism in art can be different from how courts try and understand what criticism means.
The direct criticism and the indirect.
Exactly, direct criticism, indirect criticism, and also criticism of the work and criticism with the work.
Yeah, the context and the context being changed.
Exactly.
The Suitcan case was one example. They were criticizing the Kuhn's judgment, right?
Yeah. They were criticizing Kuhn's in Campbell. So now, and we'll discuss that in a bit while. So go ahead.
In ascertaining as to what would constitute reportage of current events or fall within the ambit of criticism or review, courts ought to adopt a liberal approach.
Oh, liberal approach. What constitutes reportage? Liberal. I don't know how liberal it can be. Again, it would depend on the fact situation. So let's leave it at that. Okay, let's try and see from cases whether courts can be liberal. But at least we have one case which gives a very liberal interpretation of the word criticism. That is Civic Chandran versus Aman. Have you done that case already? You read it? Lawrence Liang's article. That's a very nice article. And the case is equally good because the case has laid down the basis for how far can you go in actually criticizing. You know what the problem with fair use is, and this has been the persistent, contestation, is whether you want to, when you say fair dealing, it has to be on the work, based on the work, or you take the work and criticize entirely something else. You're not actually criticizing the work, using the work to criticize something else. So that's where we get to civic challenge. So we'll see what kind of liberal interpretation the court wants to follow. Yeah, next.
In discerning as to whether a person has made fair use of copyrighted work, the standard employed ought to be that of a fair-minded and honest person. In the case of musical works, the test would be that of a lay hearer.
Lay hearer, lay spectator test. So you are going to find out broad similarities, broad dissimilarities between work. And these points have already been laid down in the case called R.J. Anand versus Deluxe Films. They laid down a 7-step, sort of test if you already done R.J. Anand. So basically, those tests which you normally use for infringement, finding out infringement, can also act as a layer of defense to interpret fair uses. So the court is saying that you are going to look into basically, how. Read the last portion.
Yeah. In the case of musical works, the test would be that of a lay hearer.
Lay hearer, lay spectator. You are going to compare. So comparability. Then.
While examining the defense of fair dealing, the length and the extent of the copyrighted work which is made use of is important. However, it cannot be reduced to just a quantitative test without having regard to the qualitative aspect. In other words, inquiry ought to be made as to whether the impugned extract forms an essential part of the work of the person in whom the copyright inheres. This may be particularly true in the case of musical works where a few notes may make all.
Yeah, but what if you want to make a criticism of that few, which is the essential core? The rest is all. So depends again. So this might be one factor then, which might, impede the type of interpretation that you want to give to fair use in this particular situation. Next.
Even though the copyrighted work may contain confidential information, the court would desist from injuncting the use of such work if it is in public view.
It's in
Public view.
public view.
Yeah. That's
No, in public glare. Okay.
Because
something that is in public glare is not confidential. The court need not say it. I mean, that's one of the first principles of rule of law of confidentiality, that something that is already in public glare, in public domain, cannot be propertized and said that it is confidential. But I don't know why the court is trying to again say that something that is confidential may not mean that it is always confidential. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, finish.
Okay. Though there is a difference between breach of confidence as against infringement of copyright,
Yeah.
the court would not grant an injunction in favor of the person in whose favor the copyright is if it is contrary to public policy, that is, if it is immoral, scandalous, opposed to public health, safety, inimical to administration of justice, or capable of inciting such injury or hindrance to public life, health, safety, or administration of justice.
So you won't grant injunction. And if you look into and that's when I said fair use is linked to remedies. So this factor will hinge strongly when you want to evaluate the fourth factor in case of injunction. Okay, that is the public interest. You have balance of convenience, irreparable harm, availability of adequate remedy at law, and the fourth factor being the public interest in evaluating injunctions. Okay. And then.
The principle of freedom of expression will protect both information and ideas. Freedom of expression includes the right to publish and receive information. Public interest may in certain circumstances be so overwhelming that courts would refrain from injuncting use of even leaked information or even the right to use the very words in which the aggrieved person has copyright. As at times, public interest may demand the use of the very words in order to convey the message to the public at large.
Oh my God, now this big elephant in the room, public interest. So practically, where are we ending up now? Are there any strong, tests to evaluate fair use, or does it ultimately end up, in a kind of exercise of court's discretion to evaluate public interest? And how far can we go? And then?
Public interest and what interests the public need not be
We say public interest and what interests the public may not be the same. Self-explanatory.
The motive of the user shall play an important role in assessing as to whether injunction ought to be granted.
The motive
Of the user.
of the user.
Commercial use of copyrighted work cannot simplicity or make it unfair.
Yeah. So commercial use does not mean that there is, and also some US courts have held that because in evaluating the 4 factors, commercial, just because it is commercial does not mean that it cannot be. But it is purely commercial, and the other fair use, exceptions do not are weak or meek, then that becomes important. The commercial element overrides the other things. But if there are others, transformative use, for example, can override the commercial element. Because in most cases, it's going to be commercial, right? And why would a copyright holder would not want to, would want to charge royalties for something that is not commercial? He knows that you are making money, so he can get some money. If he knows that you are not going to make some money out of it, there's no way he can ask you to, take a license because he knows that that use is harmless. So business works in ways where you actually can make money, right? So that's why was Rameshwari photocopier? Because they knew now that there is a market for this, and you can have a license, right? Otherwise, nobody bothers. Go ahead.
Lastly, transformative use may be deemed in certain situations as fair use of the copyright.
Yeah. So transformative use, again, one of the important tests. How much transformative it has to be? Those are the things that we need to see. Now, in this Ram Sampath versus Rajesh Roshan, another Mumbai High Court decision, use of 6 seconds of clip of plaintiff's theme. Now, this case, was settled by virtue of the plaintiff and the defendant getting together, and then the injunction was vacated. But then the injunction was granted initially, okay, and they said that you will have to look into certain factors here. Again, factors. Similarities and dissimilarities between the two works, which probably was not clearly defined in the earlier 13 points. Similarities and differences between the two works. Whether the defendant's work would stand alone without copying. Another interesting so if you have a work, and if you remove that work on which you are claiming fair use, will the defendant's work, standing alone, qualify as a new work? So if you want to find a degree of transformative use, this might be an important instrument when you are going to find how is the defendant work a standalone work. And what do you mean by a standalone work?
Why does it need to be?
Otherwise, it would mean that it was substantially copied.
Yeah, but I mean, here we're not talking about whether there's infringement or not. We're talking about whether it's fair use.
Yeah, because fair use comes only when there is infringement.
Okay, yeah, but so these factors seem more for whether there's infringement or not.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, only when there is an infringement would you try and identify whether there is fair use or not, right? So, a summary of this, that's why I said, the infringement factors, what you read in those 13 factors is also infringement factors. Infringement factors and fair use factors, they are interrelated because you only test fair use when there is an infringement. So catchy part in the music to which the listener is immediately hooked on, that may be another feature to find out whether there is fair use or not. So if you have taken the most catchy part, or if the other work, the defendant's work, has a catchy part which is distinct from what is being copied, then there is a chance that it might qualify for. Even if a small portion is copied, the number of times it appeared in the defendant's song would be important. You take 2 seconds, but how many times the 2 seconds appear? Till the end of the song? 50 times. So basically the content that is taken is less, the times in which it is used is more. This is another interesting way of finding out. Because especially in musical, and this is the case in relation to musical, this can happen. You take tune of 10 different people for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and do what? And say that it is fair use, but you use it so many times in the chorus or somewhere that it becomes a permanent feature and essential sort of feature of the defendants. Now, what is this time factor business? So, now you said 6 seconds and the court granted an injunction and then they mutually agree. Again in ESPN versus Global Broadcast, the question was, if the time is short or longer, should that be a determinative factor? The court didn't lay down the test. The court said, depending on the fact situation, we are going to decide. Okay? Now this gets me a little anxious because depending on what situation is the court going to decide. Okay? Now there are some factors that you usually know now. Transformative, nature and purpose of the work, okay? Commercial, non-commercial, standalone, differences, length. So length may be one among the factors, need not be the single most factor. So no standard principle enunciated in this case. So depending on the circumstances of each case. De minimis in Yash Raj TV films versus in India TV versus Yash Raj films. The court said that de minimis can be a standalone exception, and they identified 5 important factors. Look into page 336 of the text. We have the factors identified towards the
Precising type of
yeah. So the court went on to list 5 factors relevant to the assessment of whether a violation was de minimis. And why do you call it de minimis? As we know that law doesn't care for the trivials. Now, if law doesn't care for the trivials, then fair use actually wants to, liberalize the kind of trivials that you want to otherwise call infringement. So what's the distinction between de minimis and fair use? Look into what the court has said. Size and type of the harm, cost of adjudication, purpose of the violated legal obligation, the effect of the legal rights on third parties, and the intent of the wrongdoer. So a 3-second clip may well qualify a de minimis if it leads to these kind of answers to these kinds of questions in affirmative. Okay, and primarily most of the times it might just rely on the major factor might be the intent, because in de minimis, okay, the intent might be to use it for a specific small purpose, okay, and the harm caused to the copyright holder might not be large. So in those situations we'll have to assess whether it's de minimis or fair use. Criticism or review, how far can we go? OUP versus Narendra. This is a very interesting case where you have textbooks in Jammu and Kashmir State Board for 10th or 9th exams, 10th exams basically. And then you have textbooks which have copyright holders are OUP. And then what happens? They have, the author of the textbook has listed down questions towards the end of the textbook. So you have so many textbooks when you have questions towards them, notes and comments and questions. Now, Narendra Publishing House ends up doing what? Ends up preparing a guidebook based on those questions and gives a step-by-step solution to those questions. Is this violation of copyright? Or is this review of the work, criticism of the work? What would you call it?
So often step-by-step solutions. There was more application of mind.
If you look into what happened in this case, there were 2 factors. First, whether the plaintiff's works has copyright, because that's the first question you are going to ask. What is the first defense that a defendant would raise? He would not say fair use. Fair use is the next defense. He would first say that you don't have copyright in this. So that was the defense raised in this case also. He said, you don't have copyright in those questions, do you? OUP doesn't have copyright. But then the single bench said, yes, they don't have copyright because of several reasons. You want to exclude basic building blocks and math problems, and those formulas are like building blocks. And you see they took an analogy from algorithms that are excluded in patent law from a limited monopoly, and they said that if you want to give if the parliament didn't want to give a limited monopoly through patents, why would they want to give you an enlarged monopoly through copyright? Because copyright is life plus 60. So those kind of issues. But the division then said, no, there is copyright because there is minimal creativity, the modicum of creativity standard, okay, because it's there, written there. Just because it's math doesn't mean anything, okay. But then went on to say that there can be fair use and wanted to identify whether there is fair use in this case. So what did they do? Sorry. So the slide is gone. Okay, this is the slide. So they said, they laid down again some tests. Transformation of the work is required and essential characteristics must not be the same. Was there transformation in this case? Definitely there was transformation because they provided a step-by-step solution to the answers. Fair dealing important for balancing rights because the enriching the public pool of ideas and creating a vibrant public domain is important. If the textbook creators were to only create questions and not answer them, then there has to be someone to answer them. Or if they have already been answered, then there has to be someone to answer them differently. So create a vibrant public pool of ideas again. Similarities, dissimilarities matter. Okay. Resort must be had to principles underlying fair use, again the set of principles that we saw. Would qualify for review under section 52(1)(a)(2). Review in mathematical work would mean re-examination of the primary work. So defendants revisited the question and assisted students to solve them through a step-by-step solution. So all these factors led to the court finding fair use in OUP versus Narendra. Okay. I'll quickly leave this for now. Secondary infringement Nirula case, very interesting. I'll briefly explain and we can move on. Nirula, everybody eats at Nirulas. TVs they put up. All enjoy matches and TVs and same only hotels. But if you look into the exception carved out under section 52(1)(k), look into it. It has not changed even after the amendment. Just have a brief glance. Yeah, can you read that?
The following act shall not constitute an infringement of copyright, namely,
Yeah.
the causing of a recording to be heard in public by utilizing it in an enclosed room or hall meant for the common use of residents in any residential premises, not being a hotel or similar commercial establishment, as part of the amenities provided exclusively or mainly for residents therein,
Yeah.
or part of the activities of a club or similar organization which is not established or conducted for profit.
Yeah. A club which is established, you can enjoy, go to a club and enjoy, although there are high membership fees and so depending on the nature of establishment, you are exempted. So this is something called as a home style exemption. And this is one of the cases that was fought between the European Union and the US way back in 1998. Okay, this went to the WTO. This is section 110 of the fairness in licensing, fairness in license to music. That's the title of the US Act. And US had both these home style and business style. So the WTO allowed, based on the three-step test, which is something like a fair use exception under US copyright law. Okay, because US was the one who proposed those kind of exceptions, so naturally, and by virtue of common law, basically, those came in the Berne Convention and the TRIPS agreement. So they had that home style were acceptable under three-step, business style were not. Now, one of the questions that the court leaves open, and is probably vital, is that they said in this case Nirula's doesn't fall into section 52(1)(k) because purely it's a hotel, it's a commercial establishment. You can't interpret and go way beyond the law and say that you want to do fair use. They said that would be against the intention of the parliament. But they said some rule of proportionality should be allowed. For example, a grocery store putting up a small TV for viewing. So if I were running a grocery store and I put up a small TV, okay, shouldn't I be entitled to watch a TV in a shop? So those kinds of uses may be allowed in spite of the fact that it's a commercial establishment. So US does what? US has, depending on the size of the shop or size of the establishment and the amplifiers that are used to, and the size of the TVs and amplifiers that are used to broadcast, they would determine whether it falls under the home style category or the business style category. Very interesting way of finding out. So the court in this case said principle of proportionality might be looked into, but it's a wider because that was not what the court was asked to do. But in this case, Nirula's case, they said they can't avail fair use. Okay. So Civic Chandran Amani, scope of criticism, facts are very simple. Drama played, then these people went on to ask whether it is criticism not of that work, not on the work, but criticism of something, communist ideology in general. But portions of dramas were played or repeated. So would that amount to infringement? The court said no, because the word criticism can be broadly interpreted, and that's what Liang does. He says that even after the amendment, what amendment of 2012 did was that it expanded the fair use, which is in the nature of criticism or review, not just to literary, dramatic, musical or artistic work, but also to cinematographic films and sound recordings. So now what you can do is you can take clips of sound recordings and pictures, use it in your work, and still avail fair use, provided you are using it to criticize that book. And that's his major criticism of the current 2012 amendment. But he says that if Civic Chandran is interpreted in a broader manner, then we are safe. So DU photocopying, I will just end with this because I think you have had enough of DU photocopying on blogs and. But have you seen this?
Copyright case again. Hey, copyright all the way.
It's not copyright, isn't it?
What fun it is to make these needy students stay. Hey, copyright all the way. Oh, what fun it is to make these needy students stay. Books are not so cheap.
No, they're not.
Specs are for keeps.
They're not for
Why
keeps.
then do we sue when our authors don't want to?
Then we want to go to it.
Must we be right?
Must be always
It's
right.
all about the price. These students should just pay and throw their cakes away. Hey, copyright all the way. Oh, what fun it is to make these needy students pay.
What exception in the law?
Copyright all the way. Oh, what fun it is to make these needy students pay.
Thanks to John Daniel and some unacknowledged persons because they don't want to get acknowledged. So we know this. I just want to look into from a legal perspective, and there are two sections which are important here: educational use exception, and the other one is personal review criticism of the work. Okay. Questions are being raised as to what is the relationship between DU and Rameshwari agents for invoking private review criticism, whether it is the professors and the teachers who are going to make post packs and invoke it, or whether the person who is using it, they should invoke, and whether this can be these exceptions can be availed by whom? By DU. Or whether they are individual specific. It means you go and ask them to do certain photocopying is different from DU asking them to photocopy. Quantity. US allows 10% in a recent case. Okay. And then there are others, Shamnad has argued, Professor Bashir has argued, why it shouldn't be 20%, 25% because we have more. So my question is, because there are students who can't pay, can copyright a fair use instrument be used to create that kind of an access situation? Then what's the use of compulsory license? If you have a compulsory license where you can actually use for bringing down the cost of the work. Again, the other type of argument is, what do you mean by in the course of instruction? So, in the course of instruction means something like this. If I use it in the course of instruction, fine. Course packs, where is the course of instruction? You got these course packs photocopied, he got them copied to you, thanks to Manish, right? But then, it's not during the course of instruction. How are you going to interpret course of instruction? There is this decision by Canadian Supreme Court, Alberta Education, but there the question was similar, and they said that you can avail, to an extent, these fair use defenses in limited way. There is again another decision called CCH versus Canadian Law, Library, and there what happened was lawyers were getting these cases photocopied from the case books and several other articles. So there the argument is, in Canadian it was individuals, now it is collective. Here you are making multiple copies. The Supreme Court in Canada said, okay, you are going to make only one copy because different people might need different cases. It's not that one people has, 100 people need the same cases. But in case of course packs, it's multiple. Commercial motive. The library was not a commercial establishment. Here there is a commercial motive. And we need to really ask whether there is a commercial motive. Because Rameshwari photocopying is an agent of Delhi University. In a strict sense, Delhi University is a non-profit making institution. So there are these questions that we need to answer. Now, if you want to attend those proceedings and hearings, it's a very interesting one. But this is going to be one of the defining cases for how we want to interpret fair use in this country, and whether we want to introduce some additional elements to fair use, which makes it more considerate to the Indian academic situation. Okay, so thank you. I overshot my time. It's only because probably you guys came late. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. Have any questions?